Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for July 21, 2022, the JPMorgan Whistleblower headed to trial edition. Yesterday we had Twitter heading to trial against Elon Musk in October. Today, as reported by Bloomberg, the JPMorgan Whistleblower, Shakala Williams' lawsuit will go to trial in November. JPMorgan had tried to get out of the trial by filing a motion for summary judgment, and the allegedly concerning chronic deficiencies in her performance for the reason for the termination. She's claimed, of course, that she was fired for protected activity and whistleblowing. So this is going to be a pretty big trial. Lots of allegations back and forth. It's going to be interesting to see if JPMorgan actually does go to trial. Next up, in a really interesting case, as reported by Reuters, Gibson Dunn has contended that something is wrong in the state of Mongolia, and King and Spalding's behind it. King and Spalding spent nearly 2 years litigating as defendants cases where Gibson Dunn is attempting to recover assets allegedly misappropriated literally around the world. King and Spalding has done so under a contract from November 2020, and now Gibson Dunn claims that that contract is fraudulent because it was signed by government officials who were unauthorized to do so. So now we have 2 big law firms in a real pissing match, and this is going to be something to watch going forward. Next up, in a disturbing but perhaps not surprising story from NPR, corruption has reared its ugly head in Ukraine, kind of known for corruption over the years. And the president's dismissal of senior officials is casting an inconvenient, I should say, on the issue that the Biden administration has largely ignored, which is the history of rampant corruption and shaky governance in the Ukraine government. The amount of money flowing into the Ukraine obviously is quite high, and the military products that are flying in there to fight the war is humongous. And now we have the President Zelensky fired the top prosecutor, intelligence chief, and other senior officials, where the claim against them that they were basically Russian moles, but corruption's raised its ugly head. And finally, from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Richard Vanderfort reporting, banks are turning to AI to help do business ethically and in compliance, and to avoid enforcement by regulators. Not surprising, this news, but certainly continuing the trend to utilize AI in evaluating transactions going forward. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.